Hello podcast people, it's Marcus here, just jumping in at the beginning of the podcast this week to let you know there's a slight audio problem on this week's episode. So if you hear a slight crackling or static type sound at points in the podcast, it's not your stereo, it's a problem we have with the audio this end, which we didn't realise till after we've recorded. We'll try and sort it out for the next episode. We apologise for that, and in the meantime, on with the podcast.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, thank you for downloading Scuba Confidential. Welcome back. We're on episode number 9.
Are we?
Yeah.
9. They're soon racking up, actually. It
They are.
surprised me. It wasn't until I went back and had a look at them over Christmas and into New Year I realised how many we've done. We've been jabbering on for hours now.
And this is the first podcast of the year.
So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
everyone.
Year.
We hope you all had a really nice Christmas, and thank you for all the positive feedback that we've received. We hope you enjoyed the last 2 episodes, the Christmas episodes. The one with Samantha on particularly we really enjoyed doing because it was nice to have a fresh voice on the podcast, and she's so knowledgeable about what she does. That was really
It's really
nice.
interesting and really exciting hearing what she's doing for the environment as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that was fantastic, and we'd like to have her back on, quite frankly. If you would too, let us know, because we'll get back in touch with Samantha, and a little bit later in 2019 we'll reach out to her, get in contact and hear what she's been up to. Have you guys got anything to say about the last few episodes, or anyone you'd like to thank?
As you know, I kind of look after the sort of the Facebook side of things on the groups, and it's amazing the word is getting out to all around the world. We seem to be had some great feedback from listeners out in Indonesia, South Africa, America and the Philippines, just to name some of the countries. So if you guys who are out there listening to us in your warmer climes, thank you very much for all your kind comments. It's really great. And it seems as though Samantha's gone down a treat really well, so what she's doing with the climate, so brilliant.
Keep spreading the word.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, all that kind of thing. On that note, actually, we all do, all 3 of us, but I was on the Facebook page recently and we had a couple of people post really nice comments and recommendations on there. So we had Ed Smith, who's based at Scuba, I'm going to try and pronounce it, Murcia. I've been told the C's are
You didn't
pronounced like
practice
T.
that at all, did you?
No practicing at all.
No.
Out in Spain, he left a really nice comment, and thanks for that, Ed. And James, who's out in Kansas City, Missouri, who also.
Wow.
So we get people are hearing us in all these amazing places.
Great. Yeah.
I can't believe people want to hear our jabbering, but it's nice to hear. We also had a chap called Mark Dubresson, who we'll come back to a little bit later. But yeah, it's all really
Norwich
good.
is getting on the map.
It is, yeah.
For the first time since Alan Partridge.
Yeah.
Aha.
Over Christmas and New Year, well, I haven't been in the water a great deal. I don't think any of us have, because it's just where we're based. It's a little bit on the Parky side.
Cold. 4 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been doing quite a bit of writing for a magazine I write for called Scuba Diver Life, and we'll send some links to some bits that we do with them in the podcast details. And Ian, you've been on the Facebook most of the time, and Lou's been on the social media as well. So
Instagram.
It's like another job.
busy people. So we're going to skip a little bit of that as it's kind of building up to the new season. I'm sure you're all dusting down your dive gear and sending your rigs in for service and computers for batteries and that kind of thing. Ian's pointing at something. Hang on.
Well, I was just going to say about I've got some diving lined up for
Have
next
you?
week. Yeah, so I thought I'd just mention that we're off. There's a group of us. We're off to a new dive site in the UK, which is coming up. Going down just to see what it's all about, see what it's like. It's a water that's been open for a little while. I think it's been open for a few years for people to fish. There's all sorts of coarse fishing in there. Carp,
What do they swear and
pike,
stuff?
yeah, carp, pike, all sorts in there. And so we're going down next weekend as a group of us just to see what it's like. See what they invited us to go down and just.
And what is the name of this mystery place?
St Andrew's dive site in Kent.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. Could be nice. Up to about 30 metres, so not horrendously deep, but deep enough to have some fun in and explore and see what's in there.
It's not too far from London, is it? So
No,
quite
it's
easy to
just
get
outside the M25, so not too bad at all. It's about a 2-hour run from here. And we're also in the realms of what we're looking at is that we're looking at a potential dive in a lake near here, Fritton Lake, and also which has actually got some potential wrecks of tanks in and a couple of planes potentially in there. So that could be interesting, but it might be a washout because visibility could be really bad. We don't know, but it hasn't been dived for a long time. I think since the 60s.
Oh, really?
So it could be interesting. So it's a bit of a gamble on that, and we are talking about potentially diving the Yare under some of the bridges in Norwich, so which haven't been dived for. Well, there's no record of it ever been dived before, so it could be interesting.
For those who don't know Norwich particularly well, the River Yare runs through Norwich. It's sort of one of the kind of, I say, major river.
Yeah.
It's not like we have huge estuaries and rivers in Norwich.
Yeah, again, they haven't been dived, so it's a case of we'll give it a go, see if there's anything worth doing.
There's a lot of history in this area as well, so you never know what diving a new location.
One of the sites we're looking at is Cow Tower, which dates back to about 1600s, if not before.
Cool, yeah.
So it could be all sorts.
Yeah,
so
nice.
Could be
that's really good. Just on the subject of the people who contributed as well, just to talk about that. If you have some subjects, if you have something you'd like to say or you'd like us to discuss, you can get in contact with us. Twitter, Facebook, email, all the contact details are provided at the end of the show. We want to hear from you, so do drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about. We'd love to hear from you. Right, it's that time, isn't it? Lou, you've got the news.
I have. Boop, 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 boop.
What's the news, Lou?
So the first story, I think everyone's aware, it was on the main news channels a couple of weeks ago. It's the Japanese whale hunting.
Yeah.
So they've said that they're going to withdraw from the International Whaling Commission and commence with commercial whaling. So they're going to restart commercial whaling in July this year. And obviously it's been met with huge international criticism and condemnation. So
which is going to be,
it will.
Like this.
Yeah.
There is no positive about it.
Some people have argued there's a positive, exactly. So up until recently, up until this announcement, Japan have been actively whaling in the Southern Ocean, for example, and they've done it under the excuse of research.
Yeah.
And however, it's a well-known fact that you can buy whale meat in Japanese food markets, for instance. So it doesn't take a genius to put two and two together as to how that meat is ending up on that shelf. So they've done it under the guise of research, whereas now they've openly said, right, okay, we're just going to go out and hunt them, and it's kind of laid it all bare really, and been say they shot themselves in the foot with a harpoon is an understatement.
They're under a lot of pressure, aren't they? Because they're flying. Obviously, they come away from this agreement, and the world made this agreement of saying, right, we're not going to hunt whales, and although it's good news that they're not going to be hunting in the Southern Ocean, it kind of then flies against everybody else's wishes of them to then carry on in their own waters.
I just think it's absolutely just mind-blowing that in this day and age, a very, what we assume to be a forward-thinking and peaceful nation has turned around and said, do you know what, we're just going to go ahead and do this. And unfortunately, Japan's not the only one. Norway and Iceland do take part in commercial whaling as well. And I think it's just it's a massive
It's a blow to
massive blow,
to the whales as a species. Here's the thing that annoys me is kind of, and you touched on it a bit, Lou, is that they're sneaky about it as well. It's not like they're even being obvious about it. The IWC, International Whaling Commission, outlawed this in about 1986, 87. I'm sure there'll be one of our listeners who'll send in a link. Is it 86? I get Lou's on it. And for years it's been accepted that it's not a good thing to do. Whale populations were suffering. And this sneakiness of, well, we are killing them, but we're doing it for scientific research to check out the population numbers. It's like,
how magnanimous of you. Yeah.
well,
It's all right.
can they not see the cognitive dissonance there? It's
Sorry?
cognitive dissonance. When two things are opposing and they can't grasp it. That's your first new word of
Well,
the
it's
year.
like, where did that come from?
So they can't see that by killing them for scientific research, they're damaging the population.
Just-
It's
Make
still
note of that.
killing them.
Make a note of that one.
Yeah.
They're still killing them.
Yeah.
But then it's also underhand because then they're marketing the meat. So the things just don't add up, and I don't know how it can be enforced with any species. If people out there are curious about it, if they're thinking about different species where they're going on holiday, what the situation is with them, the IUCN is a really good resource for checking out the details of how species stand in terms of their populations and whether they're threatened or not. Just so you know who the IUCN are, they're the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and they have what's called a red list. It's been established in 1964, and threatened species are then listed on there, so you can see where they stand from vulnerable to endangered to in serious problems, and that covers all animal, fungi, plant species. So if anyone out there is curious about a particular species, they can go to iucnredlist.org and find out more. But this thing with Japan, I don't think it sort of underestimates how we feel about it, just putting a post on Facebook and an angry face, because it's just, it seems barbaric to do it under the
In this day and age, it's ridiculous. Like you say, the ban was brought in 1986 because some species were almost being driven to extinction.
Yeah.
And Japan have recently turned around and said that the IWC, so the International Whaling Commission, it wasn't committed enough to one of its goals of supporting sustainable commercial whaling, and it accused the IWC of being only focused on the aim of conserving numbers. Like, that's a bad thing. I mean,
Got to
it's
consider-
just
Do you
ridiculous.
know what I find is interesting is that whales aren't a dumb animal, aren't they?
No,
They are.
highly
There's been
intelligent.
lots of evidence and reports and news stories where whales have saved divers, saved people surfing on the water, where they've got in between human beings and sharks, and to shield the person away from a big attacking shark and things
I
like
think
that.
to hell with
And it
humans, Ian. The fact
proves-
that they're just like highly intelligent, sentient creatures
Yeah.
that have a strong family bond, with their
have
calves.
feelings
Yeah.
for us as a human species and the other fish, things like that around them, and we do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not I'm no militant vegan, I eat meat, but it's
There's got to be other sources for
There's-
protein, isn't there? Where
there's just
as
ways of doing things,
there is.
and in this day and age, there is no excuse for launching a fleet of ships and going out
Yeah.
and just brutally harpooning a whale
for those
in its natural
for those
environment. It's
families,
just ridiculous.
those businesses out in like Japan, Iceland, Denmark, who say that their livelihoods, are dependent
or it's
upon
tradition.
all their tradition and things like that. There's got to be other alternatives. There's got to be. We can't just carry on in 2020, 2030, 2050, just doing what we used to
Medieval
do
practices,
because
basically. Yeah.
it's tradition.
Yeah.
We've got to move on as a human species
True.
and evaluate ourselves and diversify, haven't we? Be green, be look at how we're treating animals and stuff like
Have a
that.
more ethical slant on how we
And
live.
this is one of them.
Yeah.
How do we evolve and diverse as a human species to say, right, we're not going to, we don't need hunt, we don't need to, we can carry on doing research for to find out where what to learn more about them.
I think,
on
like
an
you're saying,
intelligent point of
as
view.
Japan is a massively developed nation, and I think they've really shown themselves up by
Yeah.
doing this. On the other hand, you know, the conservation groups such as Sea Shepherd, they've looked at it from a positive perspective and said, well, do you know what? One, Japan have shown themselves up by saying that they're openly withdrawing from the IWC, and also that it gives conservation groups so much more, not just fire in their bellies, but so much more good PR, if you like, really.
Yeah.
So people are really sitting up and going, this is ridiculous, what can we do about it? So I think the support for these conservation organisations and the fight against, you know, commercial whaling is going to be, there's going to be a real resurgence in it. So I think that's,
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
a
you've got to take
positive
positive
thing,
from it,
isn't it?
really.
Yeah, hopefully like you said, Lou, trigger a backlash in terms of raising people's awareness, if nothing else, and there may be a net gain from that. Who knows? But I agree. I don't want to sort of labour the point, but I think there's the two aspects. There's the morality of it, of killing these animals, which are clearly highly intelligent, under the kind of backhanded way of saying it's scientific research to then sell the meat. So there's that morality side to it. And secondly, they form part of an ecosystem, and they're an endangered species. And you never know with these things. We need an expert like Samantha here at this point, but it's like a big game of Jenga. If you take one of those blocks away, if one of those, the whole thing could collapse. So we need research into it. We need to be mindful of that.
But I was reading something yesterday about dolphins in the UK, where it's coming to this time of year where they die naturally. You know, they're like everything else. They get to the end of their life and die. And whales are just the same. And there's no reason why people like Japan, if they want to do their research, find, you know, these dying or the dead whales who have died naturally, and do the research on them.
Well, I guess
If research needs to be done.
Yeah, but I would suspect, I'm just having a wild stab in the dark here, but perhaps the older dying ones aren't as tasty.
Or profitable.
Yeah.
That's always true. That's always true.
Okay, so I think we've ranted quite considerably about that now.
Yeah.
But I think we made our point.
I
Do you
think
reckon?
Do you think we're for or against whaling? All those in favour of whaling, say aye. Definitely silence.
Definitely silence.
All right. What else you got, Lou?
So it's a bit more of a positive story. So this is a story from the website sharkophile.com, and they've actually on
That's
the back of
one
a
weird little
study.
shark.
It's a very weird looking shark. Basically, a new species of whaler shark has been identified based on 3 specimens collected from the western central Pacific in the 1940s. So there's been loads of research and studies going into various species of sharks over the years. And the researchers believe that this particular species might already be extinct. However, it's why they gave it the name the lost shark. So basically, they've fossil records that they've used to discover a lost shark. So it's
Right.
kind of a new species.
The missing link of sharks.
Exactly. Yeah. So in 2019, where we are now, I think it's a good story. Obviously, sharks, as we know, just like whales and various other creatures,
Get bad press.
they get, well, not just that, but they're highly endangered. Thanks to us as human beings, unfortunately. So it's great that there's so much studying still going into not just current shark populations, but previous shark populations and previous shark species. And I think from an understanding of not just evolution, but just the history of the natural world, really, I think it's vitally important. So I think this is a really positive finding, actually.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it's just more information, more knowledge, and it's got to be useful. And it's just interesting as well to see one of these species that has been lost in the whole evolutionary chain and know that it existed.
Doesn't the great white still date back to prehistoric times? I think?
Really?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go back down the evolutionary family tree
They
long
haven't
enough,
changed.
we all date back to originally, one single cell animal.
We've all evolved,
whole
haven't we?
different topic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some of us haven't maybe evolved
yeah,
that far.
exactly. You don't need to go far to find that out. Some of us just need to go home for Christmas and meet our family.
Apparently mushrooms are closer to humans than they are anything else.
Well, maybe in your town,
Apparently so.
maybe the king of Bungie has spoken.
They fungi out of it.
You're just a fun guy to be with, though, aren't
Exactly.
you?
Oi.
Da-da-da.
Oh, she's getting out of the Vic and Bob gags now.
Oh dear. Anyway, but yeah, back to the report. So according to the study, the historic range of the, now I'm going to give it a proper name here.
Here we
So
go.
it's, oh no, bear with me. So it's the Cartia highness obsoluris
No way.
is the species. Apologies to
Is
any marine biologists or anyone who knows otherwise if that's the wrong way to pronounce it. But yeah, basically the historic range of this particular species is under intense fishing pressure. So whaling sharks in general. And this particular species hasn't been recorded anywhere over the last 80 years. So it's really kind of, again, it's reignited that kind of urgent need to assess its current status
Yeah.
for the
Will you
red
be
list
putting
of
a
threatened
picture
sharks.
of these on the Facebook or the
I think we already
I think
have.
I already have it. It's on our
Awesome.
Facebook page. I will put it on our Instagram page.
Yeah.
But it's a weird looking shark. Kind of looks like it's been fashioned out of an old sock or something,
Yeah,
or an old
looks
piece of
a bit-
skin, kind of
bit
Buffalo
flatter.
Bill style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks the shape of it is a bit flatter, almost like, because obviously rays are related to sharks. I always used to describe manta rays as a squash shark.
Actually, the dorsal fin almost got a feathery edge to it.
Yeah.
And the tail as
And
well.
all this visual stuff is great podcast fodder.
It is, yeah, because you can all see it.
Use your imagination.
But yeah, you can go to facebook.com/scuba confidential or to our Instagram page and you'll be able to see a picture of this creature. That's really good though. It's interesting stuff.
Cool. So that's all the news from me.
Thank you very much. I was going to move on with a topic to chat about. But before that, the King of Bungie's waving his arm around.
I was just going to mention, while we just very quickly before we do move on, about the cave divers, the British cave divers.
yeah.
Who found the 12 boys.
Yeah,
who
we
was
followed
involved
this
in the
story,
rescue.
so it'd be nice to bring it
Rescue.
to a conclusion.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention and pick the names out who were honoured in the Queen's honoured list, the New Year honoured list. So I just thought I'd quickly mention and highlight that because brilliant achievement,
Yeah.
positive result at the end, and these guys have been duly awarded for their hard work and everything that they've done. Brilliant, Richard Stanton and John. I hope I get this name right. John Verlanthen. They both got the George Medal. This is the second highest civilian gallantry award that you can get in this country. They were the first to reach the 12 boys in the caves. You've got Chris Jewell and Jason Mallinson. They got the Queen's Gallantry Medal, which they were involved in the rescue of the 12.
Yeah.
And Joshua Brachley and Connor Rowe and Vernon Unsworth, they helped map out the cave, and they all received a MBE. So
Good on 'em.
Yeah, fantastic.
all them guys. Hopefully, I've got your names right if you are listening. But congratulations on your award and well done.
Well
Yeah.
deserved.
Yeah, well deserved. They sacrificed themselves, put themselves at risk for
Yeah,
those lads in the
and you
trapped
think
in
that
that
there's
cave
only a
system.
few people in the world who could have done that.
Absolutely,
And,
absolutely. I think
These guys have done
it's
that.
amazing.
I think they're a credit to themselves, the UK, and the cave diving fraternity.
yeah,
really,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Nate. That's good stuff. Right, on with the podcast. So we have a Patreon page, folks, which you may or may not know what it is or what it does. You probably would have heard us mentioning it. Patreon is a place where you can become part of the Scuba Confidential gang.
How do you do that, Mums?
Well, Ian, it's funny you would mention that.
Oh, you're eager. Eager beaver.
If you go to patreon.com/scuba confidential, essentially at the Patreon page, you can join as part of our kind of Scuba Confidential community. You can make a contribution, just a small one each month, and that helps to cover costs of the show, allows us to do more bits and pieces, expand the kind of remit of the show, and do more to entertain you guys, essentially, and do more research and spend more time on producing these podcasts. It only takes a little bit of money. Every little helps. Whether it's £1, £2, £3, £4 a month, whatever you'd like to contribute, just the price of a cup of coffee in a Starbucks each month would be enough to
Other
really,
coffee
really
shops
help us.
aren't valuable,
Other
of
coffee shops, because we're independent and non-partisan on
Absolutely,
these things.
yeah.
But if you'd like to get involved, go to patreon.com/scuba confidential, and you can join and you can be part of the gang, and it will give you a voice as well. You're then part of the team.
Do you think they'll be able to come on the show?
Well, I think for those people who are contributors and regularly chipping in, we'd love to have them as guests. If they're divers, if they want to, they've got something they want to discuss, they want to be on as a guest, we'd love to do that. With that in mind, we had a question from one of our patrons. As we're just starting out, they're coming in dribs and drabs, but join the gang, everyone. A guy called Mark de Bresson. If I've pronounced your name wrong, Mark, then apologies again. And you've been one of our regular contributors, and you've asked us a question, basically about life after open water. And you've asked us, you'd be interested by a discussion on what happens after open water qualification. What if you stay in the UK through the winter? Should you go straight to advanced open water? Should you go straight to the ocean? What's worth learning or working on? How do you find people to dive with if you don't have a partner who's interested in diving? Essentially, what do you do? What's life after open water? And you guys must have had this as well, where you've taught an open water course and someone has thoroughly enjoyed it and they've been asking the question, well, what next?
Yeah.
What is life after open water?
Well, I think it can be daunting, can't it? Because you suddenly got this certificate,
What do you
and
do
you're
with
like,
it?
what can I do? You know,
Yeah.
the water still looks really daunting, and you know you don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
You got this license,
Yeah.
go diving.
Well, I think the first thing I was going to mention about it was the open water qualification. There are many different equivalencies to that. So it's very easy because PADI obviously has, in terms of coverage, the biggest name in the industry to get focused on PADI. And because PADI open water course is probably the most popular open water course or entry-level diving course in the world, it's easy to get focused on that. But alongside PADI, you've got SSI, NAUI, BSAC, SCOTSAC, CMAS, RAID, all these different
So many,
agencies. If you were to type into Wikipedia now, diving agencies, there'd be a list of probably between 70 and 100.
Do they all do
different-
roughly the same thing?
Well, more or less. This is the thing. So when someone talks about an open water course, there are equivalencies. There are equivalency tables in there. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of every agency and, do you have to do this on your entry-level course with that? But essentially, they all kind of fall in the same ballpark. So if you're a PADI or an SSI open water diver, you're going to have an 18-metre kind of recommended limit.
Right.
You're going to go over... Most of the core skills are pretty much like for like, with a few subtle differences, and that sort of carries on through most of the agencies. If you're a CMAS 1 star, which is their entry-level course, you've got a 20-metre kind of recommended limit. If you're BSAC kind of have ocean diver as their entry-level qualification, and then sport diver. It sounds like it should be the other way around to me, but ocean diver and sport diver. But ocean diver is kind of their rough equivalent. It kind of overlaps a little bit into what would be an advanced open water or an advanced adventurer with SSI. And that's another 20-metre kind of limit. But then with BSAC, they include some things that PADI don't in a bit more detail, such as rescue skills and mixed gases and these kind of things. So the agencies will vary.
But mixed gas, isn't it technical diving?
No, we're talking about nitrox. So something like, if you're going on holiday, basic gas analysis and learning your maximum operating depths and this kind of thing. So they'll get an overview of that and know how to use nitrox a little bit more. So wherever you start your kind of scuba diving journey, there's always going to be an entry-level course for you guys as dive masters, me as an instructor as well. I always try and keep that close in my mind when I'm teaching people that we all started somewhere. And it doesn't really matter too much which agency you learn with and those initial steps. They all teach more or less the same thing. There are going to be regional differences and agency differences, but you're going to get those groundings in those core skills.
Yeah.
All those things that you're going to learn pressure and
suppose they
volume.
all
You're going to
bridge
learn
across, don't they, I
equalisation.
suppose?
Yeah, there's like a whole Venn diagram of overlap of where they stand with these things. And I'm sure there are people out there who think their agency is the best for whatever reason, and that's absolutely fine. I don't think there's necessarily anything better or worse within the training. It's a lot of it is the
Can
instructor.
I be controversial?
What's that?
Well, I'm just thinking that, and I might be totally wrong.
Brace yourself, Lou.
Well, no, generally I am usually wrong about these sort of things, but what occurs to me is that PADI seems to be the well-known one. I might be wrong. It's just been my...
For sure.
It's the most familiar term or name, isn't it? Brand. I
Yeah,
feel like.
like when I've been abroad, it seems to be PADI what I've seen, and I might be totally wrong, and I don't want to discredit any of the other
No.
agencies at all. just
People
give my
talk about
opinion.
getting their paddy, don't they? And,
Yeah, I think that's for a number of reasons. I don't want to dwell too much on the different agency stuff, but I think the paddy, obviously, they've been around since the 60s. They spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising.
Yeah.
But where the sort of numbers of divers, they do have more qualified or certified divers than other agencies for lots of different reasons, which I won't sort of get into right now. But the people you'll find and the certification, a lot of it is going to depend on the region you're in. If you're in Central Europe, you're going to find a lot of CMAS divers from different clubs, or 1-star, 2-star CMAS divers. If you're in Thailand or Australia, it's going to be maybe even 50-50 whether you're PADI, SSI, something like that. In the UK, there's a big BSAC contingent, but BSAC, for example, in 2016 on their annual report had about 27,000 members. So in the great scheme of things across the globe, they don't have as many members, of course, compared to some of the other agencies. And that doesn't mean any of those agencies are better or worse than any of the others.
Yeah.
It just means there are going to be regional
Smaller
differences. There's going to be smaller groups. There's going to be little enclaves of divers depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Out in America, you're going to get Naui divers, so you're going to see a lot of those.
So what's been my what I've so far experienced in the little time I've been diving is that the BSAC divers in this country seem to be quite a close knit. They seem to be quite a close knit groups of people.
It's a
who go
club
out
rather
diving
than
and
an organisation. So PADI, for instance, it's a corporate organisation, if you like, whereas BSAC, so if anyone's not aware, BSAC is the British Sub Aqua Club. So yeah, it's a club. So it's a different kind of entity, if you like, or different
So maybe that's why.
different way of doing things.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
and like you say, it depends on whereabouts you are in the world as to what agency or sort of club you affiliate with, really.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, there are lots of differences. My background, and for you guys too, is pretty much PADI, SSI. I've obviously working in different places in the world. I've dealt with divers of all agencies and seen little kind of idiosyncrasies. There's another word for you, Ian.
Secrecies.
Brow is furrowing.
Idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies. Okay.
Means like little foibles and differences. Perhaps we'll edit this bit out between the different agencies, but they're all pretty similar.
So it's good to keep open-minded with
Yeah.
reference to that, isn't it?
Yeah, and where you are will depend on where you can do your local diving and how you can get involved, which is sort of where we're heading with this conversation. So in terms of tips for new divers, sort of one of the first things I would say is keep diving. Practice makes perfect. You're not the finished article.
What Louise say on the end of the
Keep
podcast.
diving.
Keep diving.
It's true.
Exactly, yeah. The open water course is the starting point. It's not, you're not the finished article by a long stretch. None of us are. We're all still learning. So keep doing it, keep getting involved, keep practicing, keep honing your skills. Second thing, continue learning. So there are other courses available. There are next steps you can take, and we'll get to that in a little while.
I think also a good thing to do as well is that if you have just qualified and your friends already are divers, is get a dive or two in with people who you already know are qualified, done dives, who've got experience, and get some dives in with them as well, because that's good as well.
Keep that
Yeah.
practice up.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
about practice. Once you're qualified, you're just out the starting blocks.
And
there's
isn't
so much to
diving
do.
all about being friends?
Yeah, it's
You
a
know,
social sport.
It's a social sport.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the more interaction you can have with different divers. Obviously, there's sometimes the danger you can pick up bad habits from divers who, do kind
Bad
of
influences.
bad
yeah.
influences or whatever. But generally, if you're diving with more experienced divers, they'll be able to offer you hints and tips
Yeah.
that at least you can see if work for you or not, provided they're safe for you. And that sort of ties in with the next thing I was going to mention, which is staying within your training limits. And I don't want to harp on about this because we had a whole sort of episode about diving limits and back on, I think it was episode 5, wasn't it? Diving on fleek or something.
This is when we talked about the Freddy-Kruger effect.
The Ian and the Freddy-Kruger effect.
Is it not the Freddy-Kruger?
No, it's not the Freddy-Kruger effect. You're not far off. Dunning-Kruger. But I think that was the episode we talked about your little misdemeanor down in Brighton, and that sounds really dodgy. But where
trying to save the lobsters and the crabs.
yeah,
Aw.
well, it's all for you already did it for the right reasons. But one of those things where when you're brand new, it's easy to get distracted. Staying within your limits is a really, really valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
I'd also say that diving in different environments is a really valuable thing to do. So if you've just learned to dive in, I don't know, maybe you've learned in the Red Sea or you've learned in the Caribbean. There's a world of difference between that and diving perhaps here in the UK or Canada or
So
something like that.
true,
Yeah.
yeah.
Perhaps if someone is listening in the Caribbean and would like to offer us some free diving,
we're not jealous.
we'd be happy to come out and host the show from
It's
there.
4 degrees here. We're not jealous at all.
Just saying.
I'm sat here wearing a parka and a hat as we record
Woolly
this.
jumpers.
Yeah. So get some experience in different environments. Diving is different wherever you happen to, put your fins on. So getting some varied experiences is really valuable. And logging your dives as well. Really good tip. People do get blasé about that, and there's a whole episode I could do on reasons why you should log your dives.
Do you think it's important to get people to sign off your dives?
I think so, in those early days particularly, sort of tying in with that concept of the family tree of diving. Each step of the way, there are minimum requirements if you want to step up, and particularly when you get to professional levels.
If you want to do a liverboard?
If you want to do a liverboard, yeah, good point, Ian. So if you go to a more advanced itinerary in the Red Sea or Galapagos, they're going to be looking for a minimum of 50 log dives you can demonstrate, and an advanced open water or equivalent, we talked about equivalents earlier, certification, to know that you have those core skills to be able to make some of those more challenging itineraries. And there's good reasons for that, good safety reasons for that when they do it. So logging your dives can work in favour like that, but also when you rock up on a boat somewhere, just out of curiosity, there'll be someone like me who's running the boat, or a dive master like you two guys, who will say, if there's someone who's got perhaps a lower number of dives, let me just have a look at your logbook. And it's not being nosy, we're just trying to get a gauge of what sort of experience do they have. If they've got 50 dives and it's all in the same lake, are they going to be ready to deal with a ripping current at, the cauldron off the coast of Bali in Indonesia and, in that neck of the woods, Raja Ampat or something
a lot
like
more
that.
difficult dives out there, aren't you, than maybe like what you would off the UK, say.
Some people might be hesitant in asking for a bit of extra guidance and support as well. So, they might be a bit not embarrassed as such, but like you say, if they've got just limited experience of diving in a quarry in the UK, this is their first time on a liverboard. It's not just how does the boat work here? Where do we put our gear? That side of things. It's a whole new environment, like you say. So some people might be a bit hesitant about that. So I think. Just be upfront and honest.
I think as well is using the logbooks is that you can store quite a bit of information on. You
can,
can't you? Because say if you qualify in freshwater, say in a dry suit, and you're logging that you've got hood, gloves, boots, all that sort of stuff, and what weight you're using to get down. Well, to suddenly go up to the Farne Islands. It's good to look back on your logbook to say, right, okay, I'm using similar gear, but what weight do I actually need to start with? Because I know I'm going to be now diving in salt water, so I need to add a bit more on.
Use your dive logs to help you and assist you. And,
There's nothing wrong with asking for advice, and the logbook is one bit of advice you can do for yourself. It's like your own journal where you can scribble down key details. Like as you said, Ian, if you're moving from one environment to the other, it's going to be invaluable.
I've got a memory like sieve, and I find,
Really?
Oh yeah, you might have noticed that. I find it quite useful that so when I go back to somewhere like the Farne Islands or somewhere abroad, you can go back to how you dived last year, what equipment you were using, and actually what weight.
you can almost fit yourself back into that mould, can't you?
Yeah. It's like, okay, this is what I use.
Yeah.
This is the amount of weight, and it sets you up for your start of your next holiday. So
you can go to Farne Island diving mode or Egyptian liverboard diving mode just by looking at your dive logs.
So I try to put quite a bit on there about what equipment you use, what weight, what the conditions were like, things like that.
Yeah.
Whether I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, that's right. And the more you can put, the merrier. I think there's a whole episode we could do about dive logs and the sort of value of them, and that might be one for a little bit later in the year.
I think it's a good crossover between diving in different environments and logging your dive.
Definitely,
There's good reason.
definitely. The flip side of that, if you think of seeing that logging the dives and waiting from the other side of the fences, when you arrive on a liverboard boat like you were talking about, whoever's doing my job is trying to make an assessment of the sort of 15, 20 divers on board, where they are they going to be competent in the water? What kind of knowledge do they have? Yeah. And it's almost like this kind of unspoken game of poker where you're kind of making little inquiries, asking leading questions to kind of establish what the dives are like. Not to be nosy or to play some kind of Derren Brown-esque psychological game with them, but really to work out, are they going to be safe in the water? How can I group these people together for their
Make
own
life
safety?
Have I
easier.
got enough staff?
Yeah. So coming back to your waiting thing,
Guides.
exactly. Coming back to your waiting thing, it's if the person is coming up to me and they don't know what weight they need, or they're asking, I've got no idea, I haven't logged my dives. This says to me, well, perhaps they don't take their diving as conscientiously as perhaps the person over there who said to me, I had 6 kilos in fresh water. Do you think 8 is right for?
Yeah.
Looking at my logbook, do you think 8 is right for this saltwater dive? Because that means they've taken the time and trouble to make a note of those things and start to establish patterns in their diving, which is a sign that they're probably going to be, psychologically, they're going to be more conscientious when they get in the water with other people as well.
Yeah.
So they're all little telltale signs,
Potential
guides and
reflections
instructors.
of their character as well.
Exactly right. With that, on boats, when you're a new diver, that kind of next step after open water, don't be afraid to ask for advice. Here's the thing: dive guides working in, particularly in some of these exotic locations, get paid peanuts. Again, that's a subject for a whole other podcast. But they're not going to come up to someone who's a qualified diver, and certainly I didn't, unless I thought they were a safety hazard, and say, you really want to do this, or I would highly recommend you do that.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. The first one is, sometimes people take umbrage at that. If they're not on a training course, if I go up to that person and say, I saw on that aspect of the dive, you were struggling with your buoyancy or your ascent or descent, or on your safety stop I recommend doing X or Y or Z to help you, sometimes people can bristle at that because everyone thinks they're a great diver.
What you employ, mate.
Yeah. So there's always the danger of that. If I do ever offer advice, I'll try and do it one-to-one away when other people have boarded the boat and we're in the water, or quietly in a saloon or over dinner or something, and just offer them tips. But it's very rare I do it, because you earn so little, and if that person then takes umbrage at that, your tip goes out the window. And your tip might be, if you're a working dive guide in Southeast Asia, that might be what's feeding you for the next few days. So if you want advice, the guides are more than happy to offer you tips on whether it's your finning technique or your buoyancy or your positioning or whatever it happens to be. But do go and seek it out, because they're not going to come to you if you're not on a training course and start giving you these bits of information. And that will all help you when you're making that step after open water.
And I suppose once you're on that in that environment, you are kind of expected to be of a certain level anyway, aren't you?
Once you're
because you've done the
qualified,
lives, you've done the dives, you've done the qualification dives, the rest
You've
of it.
effectively been signed off as a competent scuba diver.
Yeah.
And like you say, whilst the guides aren't there to hold people's hands, they're also not psychics. So unless you do ask for that extra bit of help, and they'll be perfectly happy to do that.
Yeah. You need to. That needs to be something conscious from the diver to flag it up to the
Do you
guide
think
and
it's,
the instructor or
is it
whatever.
common practice? Because like when I was online, every dive, the dive leader always asks, right, hands up who want a guide. So is that common practice that across the liverboards, would you say that that question's always asked?
Well, here's the deal with that. In some, it's a regional thing. If you're in the Red Sea, and I know you talked about, you went on a Red Sea liveaboard in Northern Wrecks and Reefs, wasn't it, Ian?
Yeah.
If you're out there, the chances are the guide is going to brief the dive and then say, okay, I'm going to pass around a whiteboard or a sheet of paper or a clipboard, or write on this wall here, whatever it happens to be, whether you'd like a guide or not. So that's your decision to make. And a guide, an optional guide, will be inclusive within the cost. If you're in a marine park, let's say you're perhaps in Galapagos or you're in the part of Thailand where I used to work, it was mandatory as part of the local marine park laws that you dived with a local guide, because there are certain regulations within that marine park. So again, because of that, the guide would be included within the cost of the diving package. If you go the other way and you head south to Australia and you're on, I don't know, you're on the Gold Coast or Great Barrier Reef and you book to go diving, as soon as you're qualified, they'll assume that you have that competency to dive as a buddy team with someone else, and you have the briefing. And if you want a guide, you would then pay extra for that guide. Okay. So there's going to be variations depending on where you are. So it's one of those things to research as you would other components of your diving when you're about to make that flight or when you're booking your dives. And it goes in the same basket as do I need A clamp or DIN regs for this environment I'm going into? What plug sockets have they got on the boat? You'll check whether that forms part of your dive plan, whether you're going to be with the guide.
Good point, actually, because it might be that we've got people listening to this who don't know that.
Well,
Who are planning trips to go to
absolutely. I mean, when we're talking about these things, of course, there are going to be people who've done hundreds of dives who'll be going, well, I know that already. And of course, but there'll be people starting out, like, for example, Mark, who very kindly asked this question, who won't have that information. So that hopefully that's useful to the people listening.
We're trying to bridge across the whole experience.
And the final bit, and I'm not going to dwell on this because we've beaten the drum on this several times, is just diving fitness, keeping yourself fit for diving.
What? You've got to be fit for diving?
I know. We're sort of sat here after Christmas with our spare tyres.
Speak for yourself.
On the run machine.
Ian's in and out of his gym classes. I'll be in the gym later.
Pumping iron.
Pumping iron. I'm like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. But joking aside, you got to have the fitness to go diving.
I thought you were just getting ready for Tinder.
Taking a leaf out of your book.
Been inspired.
You've inspired me. New Year's resolution.
Doing my best.
Now, having done all that and you've taken all those steps, there's going to come a point when you feel ready to make the next step. And the next step after all that is going to be advanced open water, or if you're a BZACer, it's going to be going to sport diver. If your SSI is going to be being an advanced adventurer diver. So all those things are out there as options, and making that step in terms of what you do after you've finished your open water course, you're going to have to ask yourself when you feel ready, when you feel confident, competent in the water. And the second thing is whether your instructor feels you're ready. You may think you're the best diver since Jacques Cousteau. However, your instructor may have a difference of opinion on that based on what they've seen in the water.
Yeah.
So it's worth getting feedback from someone who actually knows the curriculum of the course coming up, who knows your strengths and weaknesses in the water, who's done hundreds, possibly thousands of dives, and can feed that back to you and say to you, either you're ready or why don't you spend some more time practicing X, Y, or Z before you make that next step. So they're things to bear in mind. Another driver I was going to say for taking that next step and doing the additional training is where you're going to be diving. Okay, if you're just going to be diving somewhere where locally, I mean off the coast here, on the Rosie, which is off the coast of the coast of North Norfolk where we're based, the bottom is at 8 metres. Do you need that additional depth qualification? Probably not.
No.
However, if you're about to go on a trip and you want to dive the Thistlegorm in the Red Sea, and for those of you who don't know the Thistlegorm, Ian will wax lyrical about it for about half an hour if you ask him about it. The seabed on that is 30 metres, 100 feet for our American friends out there. So you would need an additional qualification to explore the outside of that in all its glory. So that may be a driver, the environment, on depending whether you want to make that next step or not.
Yeah.
And the next step for advanced then gives you a flavour in each kind of area of diving. So looking at the advanced course, we've all done it. Can you remember?
Good course. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing the course. In fact, both sides. I really enjoyed doing the course, and actually, as a dive master, being on the advanced course, I really enjoyed both sides of that, and seeing the colour, the changes of colours, depth, pressure, things like that. I find that quite interesting.
You actually get to do some proper diving, and that's what I like about the advanced open water courses, because you're not just sat on the bottom taking your mask off or leg removal and replace, and it's actually doing some proper diving. You're really finding your niche as a diver, I find, as well. So you really getting to experience different environments, getting some depth, and really, like you were saying, really thinking about your training. On the open water course, to an extent, you're prompted and you're led and you're meeting requirements and doing skills, but on the advanced course, you're really having to put all that training into place, and you really find it falling into place.
A bit more of compass work, navigation, things like that, isn't it? It's all good skills, isn't
it's
it?
all relevant as well, because it's
I
think certainly with a PADI course, it's adventures in diving, so you do adventure dives, so it's there to prepare you for
S&B.
certain environments and certain situations, and I find it's a great course.
How to get tangled up in your S&B. I mean, how not to get tangled up in your S&B, because that never happened.
Exactly. From a point of view of an instructor, or for you guys as dive masters, when someone then arrives on the advanced open water course or advanced adventure or whatever the next step is, we're kind of making the assumption you've got all the bits from your first course, the foundation bits, you're good with. So you already know how to clear a mask, as Lou said. You already know how to do a buddy check efficiently, these kind of things, and it's building on that. So there aren't skills in terms of, okay, you do a hover necessarily, depending on which aspect of the course you look at. But it's more of a flavour of different areas of diving, but certainly with the PADI and the SSI courses. And you can choose within certain bounds which ones you do, and the ones that you choose will really depend on where you want to take your diving. So you were spot on, Lou, when you said you find your niche, because it's not going to qualify you as a wreck diver, for example.
No.
But if you elect to do a wreck dive within your advanced adventure, advanced open water, depending on what you're doing, you'll get a flavour of wreck diving.
Can you do that on the part of the advanced?
You don't penetrate a wreck.
No.
You orientate a wreck.
Yeah. So you can elect to do, for example, on the PADI side of things, you could do a wreck, let's call it adventure dive or advanced open water dive, where for me I would talk to students about, okay, these are the basic principles of wreck diving, this is how you would approach a wreck, this is how you might navigate a wreck, these are the kind of hazards, points of interest you might use. Let's get you guys starting to think like divers.
Yeah.
I'm going to offer you guys a slate. I want you to work as a buddy team.
You have to put the fins on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Being more self-sufficient and then looking at, for them to lead me around the perimeter of a wreck with a slate, working as a team, noting down hazards and points of interest. And I'll normally set them a little task to do and say, okay, what does the plate on the side of the wreck say? Or how many portholes does it have? Or give them something to start task loading them in a slightly subtle way to get them thinking outside of just clearing their mask or following my fins around. So you'll know yourself when you feel ready for that, and your instructor will give you feedback on that, and you can sort of make a decision on things you want to do and what interests you. For me, I always think with people when they undertake their advanced course, it's a bit like doing your options at school when you're 14, where you can sort of kind of start to make decisions about where you see your diving in the future. So if you want to be the heady heights of a dive master like you two guys, I would always sort of encourage people to look at what is going to be useful in the environment I'm going to be working in as a dive master. There's not that you shouldn't do it, but for example, doing a elective dive of underwater naturalist.
Sorry. So what, we're going to be, in the nude?
Let's hope not, Ian.
Depends where you're diving.
Just picture that, listeners.
Wildlife, marine biology. Yeah.
Yeah. Or is that going to be as vital for you if you picture yourself as a dive master looking after students? There's going to be information that's really useful for when you're pointing out species.
Yeah.
But what might be more useful is, for example, wreck or deep, or if you're in a dry suit environment, learning how to use a dry suit so you can actually assist on those courses.
I just got this horrible thought of him doing naturalist dive.
I can assure you that in 6-degree water, that's not going to happen.
Keep your thoughts to yourself,
Don't be
Ian.
doing that 4 degrees.
Yeah. So yeah,
It's got to be relevant.
It's got to be relevant to what you're doing
and
and where you see yourself going.
Yeah.
So the final bit of what we were talking about with Mark's question was how you can get involved and keep diving. If you happen to be in the UK, there are, for example, dive centres local to us. There's one who we're involved with quite a bit, and they'll always offer trips where they'll buddy up with people or local diving. Ian's going to say something.
One of the other great ways of keeping in touch with people is Facebook.
Social media.
There's loads of groups out there who are, looking for people to join. For new divers, stuff like that, we can join the groups who are organising trips and stuff like that.
Independent clubs
and your local dive centre.
Yeah. So there's usually a local dive centre to you. There's normally a local BZAC branch. There are ways you can get involved. There are lots of people who offer organised dive trips. So if you're in the middle of Europe or in the UK or Canada, wherever you happen to be where the temperature's dropped, there are always organised trips where you can get on a flight and go somewhere with like-minded people. And it doesn't really matter if you're single or in a couple or whatever, because diving's such a communal thing. You'll end up making friends within a few hours.
Who mingle.
Single, is that actually a group?
That is an actual Facebook group.
Why does it not surprise me that you knew that one here?
Single divers that mingle.
There you go.
What a great name.
So there's lots of options out there. There's loads of things you can do.
You and I are both members.
We are, yeah. And there's lots of things you can do to get involved.
even if you just jump in a pool, if your local dive centre has got a swimming pool, for instance, you can always borrow some gear, or if you really want to, you can purchase your own gear, jump in a pool and just have a butt around for an hour.
Yeah, practice those skills.
Sit on the bottom, practice the skills. Just have practice your buoyancy. And likewise, a lot of places, Paddy, for instance, they'll offer courses that aren't necessarily diving. So, for instance, we're in the UK at the moment. It's cold. Not many people are doing much open water diving. But there's classroom courses. You've got the equipment speciality, the nitrox speciality, emergency first responder, and they're all valuable courses. If you really, feel they're relevant to you, you can keep up. You can still keep in that diving loop and keep up that knowledge point of things by doing classroom-based courses. It's another option.
My niece, who's just qualified down in Portsmouth, but they're right on the coast. So they're part that idea, and they're going to do some revision in the pool, and then do the open water dives when the climate warms up down there, which is a good idea because I
just recap. Like Marcus mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter what level you are on the paddy tree, or whatever sort of social or diving circles you're involved with, you're always learning, and you can never know too much about diving. You can always learn something new, and I think that the key is to keep open-minded and make sure you're ready for that next step. So once you're qualified as your open water diver, don't think, oh, right, I'll go and do my advanced straight away. If there's anything you're not sure about still, practice that in the pool, or ask your instructor for a bit of extra support and guidance, because there's nothing wrong with that at the end of the day, is there?
No, and I think when you're learning, you meet new friends as well, don't you? And they'll be in the same position as you.
Yeah.
And you might be in a group of, say, like 6, 8 people in the group. You meet new friends, and they'll be in the same position as you, and you can go and do that first dive as a group together. So you're all learning all at the same pace as well.
Yeah.
And you could even say to your instructor, "Would you mind buddying up with us?" And just for a dive or something like that, or a dive master.
Yeah, there's always options.
It's a social sport, and certainly when I'm going to mention the J word, but when you've gone on the same journey together, and you've all learned at the same sort of pace and same level, you've got that camaraderie there. You've got that real kind of like sense of achievement for a start, and then you think, wow, let's go on this adventure together.
You want to use it, don't you?
Yeah, book a holiday with your mate, or just go for it. That's what I say. Take a plunge, no pun intended.
So I think that's probably a really good point to wind things up on. So in answer to your question, Mark, open water is the foundation. There are clubs, local dive centres you'll be able to get involved with to dive through the winter. There'll be people just like you who want to keep going diving, whether it's on trips or locally. When you're ready, and it might be directly after your open water course, so you might feel you need a little bit more time, there'll be the next step to take, which will either be your advanced open water, your advanced adventurer, your sport diver, your CMAS 2-star, whatever it happens to be, depending on your denomination. And then you can start to find what really you enjoy in diving, and just as Lou said, you find your niche and start to explore those aspects of diving that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, like you say, that's the main thing. Enjoy it, because that's why we're doing it in the first place.
I think if you do enjoy it, and I think you're enjoying diving and getting to know the people you're with, it all helps encourage you to then get back in the water again, doesn't it? And it helps build your confidence.
You've got that driving incentive.
I remember when I qualified, that was the big thing. We had fun. There was, we were having laughs. As we do it, because you made a mistake and you laugh about it and things like that in the pool. And and it is a great experience to learn, not just to learn the dive, but to then actually go and learn, put that skill into practice. It's a brilliant thing to go and do.
It's exciting, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think it's probably a good time to wind it up and bring things to an end. So thank you to everybody who's listened so far. We hope if you're a new diver out there and you're listening to this, you've got something, some shred of some shred of knowledge from our jabbering for the last few minutes. We're going to have a little trail at the end where we'll tell you about the social media links and our Patreon page. But for now, thank you very much for listening to Scuba Confidential. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Scuba Confidential. We really appreciate you tuning in today. We'd like to clarify that we're in no way affiliated with any agency or organisation. All opinions expressed during this podcast are our own. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at ScubaConfident1, Instagram and Facebook at Scuba Confidential, and if you'd like to support us via Patreon, go to patreon.com/Scuba Confidential. Any contribution is really appreciated. Additionally, if you have any suggestions for topics or discussions, just let us know at scubaconfidential@gmail.com. Many thanks to Plunkett Music for the groovy tunes, and we'll catch up next time. Until then, keep diving.